Now, you've probably seen the movie The Black Phone. If you haven't, I suggest you go see it. In fact, The Black Phone 2 is coming out. And basically, a kidnapped boy, a soundproof basement, a broken phone that somehow still rings, and the voices of dead boys whispering how to escape. It's absolutely terrifying. But what if I told you this just wasn't a movie? And in the 1970s, two different men in two different cities built real soundproofed rooms. And inside them, a plywood board, metal handcuffs, and a pattern of missing boys that should have set off every alarm bell. But no one listened. And by the time that phone actually rang, well, it was already too late. Welcome back. I especially want to say welcome to all the new subscribers. Believe me, I do not take your time for granted. And tonight's story is one of the darkest that I have ever told. So if you make it to the end, drop a blood spatter emoji so I know that you stuck with me. And this episode hits hard. Plus, there's more coming. Also, at the very end, there's going to be a note that I want everybody to stick around to listen to because it could change somebody's life. Midnight Mafia, we want to do that. And I will be deleting this note at the end of the story by the end of October. So this is your only chance to listen to it, and it'll really help somebody out. And lastly, if you're new here, every October we at least double the episodes, and that's why we call it Hell Month. So to support, please become a member by hitting the join button or just hit that like button. And yes, you got both of the last stories up to 100 likes, which means you will get an extra episode. And instead of doing 3 episodes a week, because you two will absolutely hate me if I do that, the extra episodes that you get, well, that means in November, for how many ever weeks, you will get an extra episode. So either Thursday or Friday and Monday. Monday is the main day, remember that. I'm sorry, that was a lot, but without any further ado, as of now, it's time to slip into a mind that's not our own. Let's go. This story takes place in Houston, Texas, August 8th, 1973 at 8:24 a.m. The Pasadena police dispatcher pick up the telephone, and they hear a teenager's voice shaking, and it says, "I just killed a man." So when officers go and arrive at 2020 Lamar Street, they found 17-year-old Elmer Wayne Henley standing over the body of Dean Corll, and he was shot 6 times. Self-defense case, open and shut, until Henley opened his mouth. "He's been killing boys for 2.5 years. I helped him." Detective Mulliken felt his stomach drop. How many boys? And that's when Henley's eyes went dead. I lost count. And Mulliken, for the first time in 20 years on the force, felt afraid. Chicago, Illinois, 1970 to 1978. While Dean Corll built this operation in Houston, John Wayne Gacy built his in Chicago. Different city, but the same playbook. I bet you never knew this about Gacy, but Gacy ran PDM contractors $5 an hour to teenage boys who needed work. Almost double minimum wage back then. He was a Democratic precinct captain, dressed as Pogo the Clown for charity events. And he had his photo taken with the First Lady, Rosalind Carter. So think about that. With all that in mind, this guy is the perfect neighbor. Nobody suspected that beneath his suburban house at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue, bodies were piling up in his crawl space. Now, Dean Corll, he was an electrician. He was quiet, he was polite, and he had never gotten in trouble with the law at all. He was never arrested. And kids knew him as the Candy Man because his mother owned a candy factory. He'd hand out, these free sweets at the playground, smiled at the kids, became part of the neighborhood. But Corll had rented a boat storage shed, and inside he built a soundproof torture room. The air thick with the smell of bleach, trying to mask something way worse. There was this plywood board that was 8 feet long, painted white, eye bolts and handcuffs at precise intervals, just like in the movie The Black Phone. One difference though, this was real. The Black Phone, isn't fiction, it's a warning. In 1970, he recruited 12-year-old David Brooks, and in 1971, 15-year-old Elmer Wayne Henley. He told them that he would pay them $200, which was a lot of money back then, for every single boy that they brought to him. And he sometimes only paid $5 or $10, but by then they were already trapped. And Henley later said, "I needed the money. My father had left. My mother wasn't working. I had 3 younger brothers." It's crazy what the psyche will do to justify the most heinous acts. But that's the reason that Henley started bringing him boys. Friends from school, kids from the neighborhood, hitchhikers even. Between 1970 and 1973, at least 28 teenage boys disappeared just in Houston. And police dismissed all of them as runaways. I mean, how many kids were dismissed as runaways when they were already beneath the floorboards? John Bukovic worked for Gacy's company for 8 months. And when he quit, Gacy refused his final paycheck. And on July 31st, Bukovic went to Gacy's house to demand his money. And I think you can see where this is going because he never came out. Bukovic's parents called police over 100 times, begging them to investigate Gacy. And their phone rang and rang at the station, but nobody picked up. I mean, think about it. Gacy was a respected businessman, a precinct captain. Why investigate him over some teenager who probably just, ran away? And beneath Gacy's garage, Bukovic's body rotted in the dirt. These are some of the strangest tales ever told, and who would have thought that The Black Phone was based on John Wayne Gacy and Dean Corll? I mean, this is actually crazy. I've never told a story about John Wayne Gacy, and I didn't know I would in this one, but just to know that Dean Corll was also known as the Candyman, that's 3 different stories given to you in The Black Phone. And if we switch to Houston, March 24, 1972, the first time Henley watched Corll kill someone, it was his friend, Frank Aguirre, 18 years old, someone that Henley personally knew. And Henry brought him to Corll's apartment thinking that they would, just go and hang out. Corll then handcuffed Aguirre to the torture board, and for hours Aguirre just screamed into the soundproofed room where nobody could hear him. Then Corll decided enough was enough, and he strangled him with a nylon cord. "I was horrified, and I should have gone to the police," Henley said later. But you know what? He didn't. Because Corll told him it was already too late. They were both implicated now in murder. So Henley, feeling trapped at this point, and having no money at all, kept bringing him boys for this little bit of a paycheck, and now just worried that his whole life was gone, done. He thought they were just going to hang out, but no. He brought his buddy to literally be slaughtered and tortured. Henley later admitted, "At first, I wondered what it was like to kill someone. And later, I became fascinated with how much stamina people have." So it seems Henley became twisted, or already was twisted during this process. And by 1973, Henley himself had killed at least 6 victims. Now we're going to Chicago in January 1977. Robert Donnelly, only 19 years old, he made the mistake of standing at a Chicago bus stop on a cold winter night. And that's when John Wayne Gacy came over in a car and offered him a ride. And he brought Donnelly to 8213 West Somerdale Avenue. He knocked him unconscious, and when Donnelly woke up, he was handcuffed to a board. Imagine how terrifying that would be. For hours, Gacy SA'd him, tortured him, dunked his head in a bathtub until he passed out, and then revived him, and then did it again and again. This is as sick as you could possibly get. Plus the mock executions with a gun loaded with blanks, barrel against his head, click, Donnelly begged Gacy just to kill him at this point. But for some strange reason, Gacy let him go instead. He dropped him on a corner and said, "Don't tell anyone. They won't believe you." Well, clearly, Donnelly went straight to the police. He told them everything, the address, the torture, the handcuffs. And that's when officers actually went and questioned Gacy. Gacy just smiled and said, this sex slavery roleplay thing, it was all consensual. And the police believed him. Donnelly's report was filed anyway, and Gacy kept killing. Now let's go to August 8th in Houston, 1973 at 2 in the morning. Henley brought two friends to Corll's house that night, Tim Curley and a girl named Rhonda Williams. They drank and even huffed paint, and then they passed out. And when Henley woke up, his wrists were handcuffed. So were Tim's, so was Rhonda's. Corll was furious. "You weren't supposed to bring the girl," he said. And he told Henley to cut off her clothes and SA her while Corll worked on Tim. But Henley had been raised to protect women. And Rhonda kept whispering, "You're not going to let him hurt me." And Henley said no. And Corll lunged. And that's when Henley grabbed the .22 pistol from the nightstand. 6 shots. Boom, 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 boom. And Corll dropped. So you could say Henley became the first boy to escape Dean Corll's torture room. Not by waiting for ghosts, but by picking up a gun. Houston, again, August 8th through 10th in 1973. Henley led police to the boat storage shed. 8 bodies the first day, 9 more the next. Then High Island Beach, 6 more. Then Lake Sam Rayburn, 4 more. 28 bodies total, ages 13 to 20. Many of these men or boys had been reported missing. Parents did file reports. Friends called in tips. Police dismissed them as runaways. The Houston mass murders became the worst serial killing in American history at that time. Okay, let's take a beat. Let's fast forward to Chicago, December 11th, 1978. Elizabeth Priest walked into Nissan Pharmacy at 8:50 p.m. It was her 46th birthday, and the family was waiting at home. And all she needed to do there was pick up Rob, and that was her 15-year-old son who was finishing his shift. The store owner said something to Rob, and Elizabeth saw her son's face light up. So Rob, he walked on over and he said, "Hey, can you wait a few minutes? Some contractor wants to talk to me about a job." And the candles were melting at home, but Rob was a good kid, an honor student, and what harm could just a few more minutes do? So she said, "Okay, but make it quick." So Rob grabbed his blue parka and walked outside. And the sad thing is, she never saw him alive again. Chicago, December 13th, 1978. Lieutenant Kozenzak, I hope I said that right, got the search warrant 2 days later. And when he opened Gacy's front door, the smell hit him so hard that he gagged. I mean, he had smelled death before, during the war and within his 20 years of homicide, but not like this. This crawl space was humid. It was sweet and rotting. And Gacy, he just explained it away as, the moisture that's been hiding up in the crawl space. And that's when one officer found a crumpled receipt in Gacy's jacket from Nissan Pharmacy. So they called the Peace family. Yeah, does this belong to Rob? No, but it belongs to his friend Kim. She put it in his parka pocket that night. Rob had been in this house, which meant Gacy had lied. Which meant in return, now they needed to go and search that crawl space. So they arrested Gacy on December 21st. And in the interrogation room, he talked for hours. About Jack and John and how they used handcuffs and how they used rope. He talked about himself in the third person. Then he said he had killed 32 young men. Not only that, he then began to draw this diagram showing where the bodies were buried. And then the next day, December 22nd, the excavation began. 26 bodies were under the house. 3 of them were in the yard. 4 more were in the Des Plaines River. 33 victims total. The youngest were 14. So what's the pattern? Well, the pattern is 2 cities, 2 monsters, and the same system failure. Soundproofed rooms, torture boards, dismissed reports, teenage accomplices, bodies buried where nobody thought to look. And both of them could have been stopped. Remember, parents called police hundreds of times. Victims escaped and reported everything. Boys went missing in obvious patterns, but nobody listened. So I'm sure you're asking, well, what happened? Well, Henley got 6 consecutive 99-year terms, and he's still in prison, repeatedly denied parole. Brooks got life, and he died in prison from COVID in 2020. Corll, as we know, was shot 6 times by Henley and died. Gacy was convicted of 33 murders and sentenced to death, and on May 10th, 1994, he was executed. And I don't like to swear on this channel, but this is in context, so I'm going to say it. His last words, you know, when they say, what are your final words? Well, John Wayne Gacy's final words were, kiss my. And like I said, Corll never faced trial. He died with 6 bullets in him in his living room floor. But Rob Peace's body was found in the Des Plaines River 4 months earlier. Elizabeth finally got her answer, but not the one that she wanted. And every December 11th, she remembers those words. Make it quick. One of Corll's victims still hasn't been identified, a John Doe from 1973, still waiting after 50 years. 5 of Gacy's victims also remain unidentified for decades. And in 2017, victim number 10 was identified as a Jimmy Hackinson. And in 2021, victim number 26 was identified as Francis Wayne Alexander. But there are still unidentified victims. And in 2003, a retired cop named Bill Dorsch said he saw Gacy with a shovel at 2 a.m. at an apartment building in the 1970s. And after Gacy's arrest, Dorsch told police to search those grounds, but they never did. And in 2012, lawyers requested excavation, but it was denied. Lack of probable cause. And if Dorsch is right, there are still bodies buried there. Boys who were never found, okay? Families who never got the answers that they deserve. The black phone shows a basement, a torture board, a killer who seems unstoppable. But what it doesn't show is that both Corll and Gacy had multiple chances to be stopped. And the system failed every single time. The monsters don't hide in the dark. They hand out candy. They offer $5 an hour for jobs, and they dress as clowns. Remember, they're respected members of the community, and the only thing that stops them is a teenager who picks up a gun at 2 in the morning and says, no, not this time. 6 shots, dead. Or a mother who won't believe her son ran away. It's unfathomable. It doesn't make sense. Or a receipt in a pocket that proves that a boy was there. But as you know, by then it's already way too late. Because when that phone rings in the basement, on the other end, well, it isn't ghosts. It's the sound of all the boys who are screaming for help. And even though they're screaming, nobody came. Now guys, I know that was an intense one, but one thing that is totally separate from the channel that I wanted to tell you on this episode is that I want you to check in my description right now. The first thing right below the paragraph you're gonna see is a link, and it's free. All you do is click it and vote on a picture that one of my buddies back from Massachusetts took. If he wins this, it could literally change his life. So all I'm asking you to do is to freely vote for his picture. You click on the link and you hit vote for free. And just like that, you did your good deed for the day. So please, please do that. And guys, I got a lot more crazy episodes lined up for Hell Month. Some of them are going to knock your socks off. I'm just telling you the truth. And a lot of people haven't watched my last one, so go watch that right now. That one will be like right here or right here. But also, if you want to see a story that possibly is even more disturbing than this, that has to do with the basement, well, click right here. That's all I got for you guys today. I will see you on Monday. Be there. Cheers.